Welcome back to our series, Economic and Legal Considerations of Hemp. I'm Justin Benavidez, a district economist with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, and today we're going to talk about hemp budgets and how to use them. This is a grant sponsored by the Southern Extension Risk Management Education Center, put on by Texas A&M AgriLife Extension faculty. So go ahead and dive on in. First, we want to talk about hemp budgets in general. So what are the basics of a budget? We've got different segments that are going to allow you to update your own budgets in particular, but also examples that will be available to you to go by as a template. So we've got basic pieces that include revenue, variable cost, fixed cost, break-even prices at some given yield, and then profits. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how all of those interact to come together. So first we're going to talk about revenue. I think this concept is pretty self-explanatory for everyone, but the basics mean that how much money do we generate in general? So what is revenue? It's the price of an output for a given unit of some commodity. And so obviously for our purposes, we're talking about hemp. There are different hemp products that include CBD production, grain production, and fiber production. And so what we want is a price for a given unit multiplied by the total units that we produce on an acre or a field. It just depends on what unit you're discussing. So the key components, again, of revenue in the production of hemp are what is our pricing model, and then we want to know our ability to produce a given amount. And so, again, those different products are priced in different ways. In particular, CBD has a unique pricing model that we'll talk about in another segment. But grain and fiber are typically just priced on weight, like many of our other commodities. The ability to produce a given amount of hemp is one of the key variables in hemp production. It is a new product, and the agronomics are not quite well fleshed out yet. And so understanding how much hemp you're going to produce on a given acre of land is one of the key variables when we talk about generating revenue and also cost. Variable cost is the second part of the budget we want to discuss. This is essentially costs that change based on the quantity of something that you grow or produce. So this includes inputs like plowing, hauling materials, fertilizer, and seed. So you can see that as we plow more ground, the cost of plowing is going to go up. As we plant more seeds, the total cost of seed is going to go up. So the more of a product that we produce, the higher our variable costs. These graphically or mathematically, whenever we consider our budgets, are what we pay for first. And so the total variable cost for a given unit provides us with the shutdown point. Essentially, if you are covering all of your variable costs and then you have a little bit left over to go towards your fixed cost, we are going to say that you would continue to produce that product. If you are not covering all of your variable costs, it means that in a real sense you are losing money and therefore you would shut down. So again, variable cost is a very key component of an overall budget, and it's one of the things that we have to consider when we talk about how much we want to produce. Fixed costs are things that don't change, costs that don't change with the quantity that we do grow. So for hemp, this includes inputs like equipment investment and land payments. Now those two are things that we see when we produce any commodity. Equipment investment and land payments are on budgets that we have for corn, they're on budgets for cotton, on budgets for producing cattle. A unique fixed cost that we think about whenever we're talking about producing hemp is the legal expense. So we do recommend that before you get into hemp production that you visit with a lawyer. You have a lawyer review any contracts you have for producing hemp and selling it to somebody. And so the legal expense is something that doesn't necessarily change based on the amount of hemp that you produce. Regardless if you're producing 1 acre and selling that or producing 100 acres and selling that, we do recommend that you visit with a lawyer whose time is probably going to be billed hourly. These costs are paid for in part or in full following you paying for your variable costs. So again, graphically or mathematically, when we look at this type of cost, we would assume that we begin to pay off part of these costs after we've paid for all of our variable costs that we talked about on the previous slide, like seed and plowing labor. So if you are able to cover all of your fixed cost and then have some left over, this means you've covered all your variable costs and now you're covering your total costs, which means that if you have some left over, you are turning an economic profit. We consider this our break-even point. So now we're going to talk about break-even prices. Break-even prices are a point at which you are covering a certain type of cost. And so variable cost, any price that you receive above your average variable cost, that's going to be where we continue producing. Again, we discussed this earlier, but as you continue to make a higher price than your average variable cost, we would consider that a signal to continue producing our product. Any price you receive above average total cost is going to be what we consider economic profit, which in turn means that you get to take some of that money home. Total costs may change depending on what you consider as part of your total costs. We typically do not include returns to labor or returns to your time within total cost, which means that essentially you cover all of your basic costs and what you have left over is money to take home in your pocket. But some people consider labor to a producer as part of their total cost. So that's something to consider very in depth whenever you are doing your budgets. These prices are calculated as total costs or variable costs divided by a total yield. This produces a price per pound that we need to achieve in order to cover our variable costs or total costs. So again, if the price that's on the market is higher than your average variable cost or average total cost, it means that you have exceeded your price needed to shut down or stay in business, or exceeded the price that you need in order to turn a profit. This break-even price is going to vary depending on your different yields. So obviously if with a certain set of inputs you achieve 1,000 pounds of some product, but another set of inputs you achieve 1,500 pounds of a product, the break-even price for that higher production is going to be lower. We have tables on all of our AgriLife budgets that help you parse out what these differences are. And so the way to look at this is at 100% yield in the left-hand column, we have 1,000 pounds of production. The break-even price to cover our variable cost at that level is 77 cents per pound. The break-even price to cover total costs is $2.53 per pound. Now, if for some reason you expect that your yield is going to decline or going to increase, you can look at different levels of production on a per acre basis, which will give you the break-even price to cover variable costs at different levels of production. For instance, if we assume that our total production is going to be 75% of normal production, maybe with lower rainfall, we could assume that we're going to have 750 pounds of yield of a given product. That means that our price to cover our variable cost is going to go up to $1.03 per pound. To cover total costs, we would need $3.38 per pound. So you can see that as production decreases, break-even prices increase because we have less product to sell. Profit now, the last component, the thing we're all really interested in. Does profit exist? Profit is revenue minus cost, and that's going to yield us either a profit or a loss. Covering total variable costs and total fixed costs yields us a profit, and if the price is above the break-even price to cover average total costs, that means that we're going to have a profit available to us. This is the goal that we're all after, and this is why you sit down and build your own budgets. Again, you can use our templates, but we do recommend that you put your own information down and keep records over time so that you can better analyze your own budgets to determine if you're going to make a profit in the upcoming year. Please take our survey at the end of this video using the QR code. Thank you.